What's going on, everyone? The Competitor here with a very important video for Mortal Kombat 1 and fighting games. Now, this is a topic that a lot of people either don't understand or it's too intimidating to learn and whatnot, but today we are going to go over how to read and understand frame data. Now, as you can see, I have the frame data displayed on the bottom of the screen in practice mode. I basically train with this up all the time because fighting games in a way are a giant game of chess, but with math involved as well. That's why understanding frame data is very important, but you don't need to understand all of it. You only need to understand a few key points. I'm going to go over that here. So, starting with startup. The startup is how fast the move comes out. There are 60 frames a second. The game runs at 60 FPS. So, in 1 second, there are 60 frames. So, for example, every character in the game has a 7-frame jab. That is the standard. Your standing one is 7 frames across the board. That's generalized throughout this game. So that means that this jab attack comes out in 7/60ths of a second. That is what the startup means. So a move like this that's 9 frames is 2 frames slower than 7, because this one starts up in 7/60ths of a second. This one starts up in 9/60ths of a second. So that's how to read your startup frames. Basically, the higher the number, the slower it is. So as you can see, like Johnny's back to 19 startup frames. That's significantly slower. Now the next tab is active. These are the active frames. This is how long the move's hitbox lingers on the screen for. So as you can see, the jab only has 2 active frames, which means there are only 2 frames where this will collide with the opponent. And in this game, the moves generally don't have a lot of active frames. So if you throw this out, it's only active for 4 frames. How active the moves this isn't super crucial to understand, especially like at a mid-level, but you know, this plays into important setups and stuff way later down the line when you really get into it, but I don't think the active frames are very useful to know right now or really jump into. And then the recovery frames, pretty self-explanatory. It's how many frames it takes for your character to recover back to neutral after an attack. So as you can see, this move recovers in 31 frames. So that is 31 frames after the startup of the move until I can move again. So I'm holding up to jump as soon as possible as the move recovers. So as you can see, certain moves have way faster recovery. For example, a jab recovers in half the time you could move. The recovery of attacks is kind of important, but doesn't play much into the frame data things. Like, you're not going to need to know the recovery on Johnny's, jab or something. It's not super important. Maybe when you get into the nitty-gritty things, like with the active frames, but as for learning frame data, the recovery isn't super important. Now, block advantage. We'll touch on that next. Hit advantage shows how many frames the opponent is basically stunned for. So if I hit him with forward 1, you guys can see in the bottom left that the hit advantage is 22. That means for 22 frames, this character cannot press a button. If I said I'm gonna switch to Kung Lao, and I'm going to record Johnny doing forward 1. Whoops, I'm blocking. Whoops. Let's turn that off. And I'm going to have him immediately do a move after. As Kung Lao, I am holding up. I am pressing every button I can right now. And I cannot do anything about it. That is why learning how to read frame data is super important. Because in situations like this, where you'll see the opponent do a poke, you'll realize, okay, that's 12 hit advantage, right? So on hit, this would be, the saying is you're plus 12, because you can move 12 frames faster than the opponent. The best way to prove this is to set the opponent to jump, and I'm gonna poke him when he lands, and I'm gonna hold up. And you're gonna see, I'm gonna jump 12 frames faster than the opponent. As you can see, I was able to move faster than the opponent. I can do the same with a different attack. I'll do a down 4. That is 15 frames. So as you can see, I'm moving 15 frames before my opponent can. Which is why in a situation where you land a poke, this is why landing a poke is so important in Mortal Kombat, is because if you land a down 1, you're plus 12, meaning if you properly frame trap them, which is using a move that would be faster than the hit advantage to stop them from being able to move, then you're going to get rewarded by either full comboing them or getting the extra hit. For example, I have Kung Lao jumping. You could see that I'm plus 12 after a poke, which means I can move 12 frames before my opponent can. If we take a move like forward 3, which is 9 frames, I'm still going to be able to move 12 frames faster than them, and using a 9-frame move, I technically would have 3 more frames of leeway there before we're back to neutral. So as you could see, if I set him to not block, and he's set to jump, he cannot jump if I time this properly. If I down 1 him, my forward 3 will hit every time. He cannot jump or press a button out of it. And then he gets full comboed. That's why poking is super important in NRS games. That's how it works. You get a poke on hit, you enforce your button that works. Now if I chose to do something slower like a forward 4, you can see this is 28 frames of startup. This won't work. You can see they could jump. Right? Because down 1 is only plus 12. So if I did a move that's 28 startup, you know, that's significantly more time, many more frames than it would take. So if we take 28 minus 12, that would be 16 frames, right? So this move would hit 16 frames after he could move, which is a lot of time to do something. So if we set Kung Lao to do, you know, just to, I guess, I don't know what the best way to prove. Okay, we're going to set myself to be Kung Lao, and we're going to set Johnny to do this. So if Johnny did down 1 into forward 4, you could see that I could interrupt that easily. You know, I could do a combo, I could do whatever I want basically. As long as I use something that's faster than that 16 frames, right? Because 28 frames startup on plus 12, that move technically comes out in 16 frames from your neutral. So if I did something faster than 16 frames with Kung Lao, I could interrupt that on hit, right? But now if I did something slower than 16 frames with Kung Lao, for example, my forward 4, right? If I did Kung Lao's forward 4, which is 19 frames, you'll see it won't come out in time. No matter how hard I try, it's going to come out slower than Johnny's, because technically his is coming out in 16 frames. So that's kind of how frame data on hit works. And if you guys have any questions, don't be afraid to leave a comment. I also will have Metafy sessions up as soon as this game releases online practice mode, because I don't want to charge you guys just to play sets with me, and I feel like a one-on-one training session is a lot more beneficial in training mode, so that we can go over these things with specific examples for your character. Now, the next tab we're going to do is cancel advantage. This just simply shows how much advantage there is on hit for you to cancel into a special move. So, for example, you know, Johnny Cage can special cancel into Rising Star after that attack because, you know, the move comes out in 12 frames and it's plus 28. And then off of this, cancel advantage is higher, but it makes it whiff. I can't really think of a situation where something doesn't combo into it with Johnny Cage, but I don't feel like the cancel advantage is necessarily too important. I feel like that lands more into the other tabs like recovery and active frames, where unless you're doing specific setups or something of that sort, it doesn't really play into things too much. Just knowing what moves you can and can't special cancel out of. Like, there's no cancel advantage on the end of strings and things like that because you can't special cancel out of it. Simple as that. Now, the big one. This is the big one. This is, if there is anything you take away from this lesson, it's going to be this block advantage. Block advantage is, in my opinion, the most important thing to understand with the frame data. It works a lot like the hit advantage. Okay? So, the big three that you guys need to walk away out of this knowing is, if you know your startup frames, your block advantage, and your hit advantage, you're going to do well. You're going to be so many steps ahead of the millions of other players that play this game. Okay? Block advantage. 0 is true neutral. That means if... Well, let's see. Does Johnny even have anything that's 0 on block? I don't think Johnny has any moves that are truly 0 on block. But 0 on block would mean true neutral. So if we went back to that example of, you know, if they jumped, right? We're gonna pretend that I guess Johnny's standing, his 2-1 is -1 on block, so Johnny will be at 1 frame disadvantage here. But rip the Roomba that just went in the pool. But I'm going to have Kung Lao set to jump, and he's going to jump 1 frame faster than me at -1, as you can see there. Whereas another example, Johnny's 1-1 is +3 on block, right? So you can see that I move 3 frames faster than Kung Lao after this. I could jump slightly before. That's the biggest difference between the hit advantage and the block advantage. Block advantage, there are going to be negative numbers. So for you, the player 1, if you do something that has a negative block advantage, that means you are at disadvantage. That means -5 means that Kung Lao, or, well, the opponent, can move 5 frames before you do. As you can see here, he has the advantage of jumping. So he can move 5/60ths of a second faster than you. And why that's important makes all the difference of why you're getting full comboed for trying to press buttons out of turn. So where does this play into, right? This is the big question, is how do I apply this? You got to take a look at things, right? If I am Kung Lao and I do something that is unsafe on block. Now, here's a term you hear a lot, is safe and unsafe. What does that mean? Basically, I'm going to give you guys a rough outline. Anything that says -7 or higher is safe on block. So if something is -6, -5, -4, -3, -2, whatever it may be, I'm going to set them to a block. Anything you see that's -6, that is 100% safe on block. Nobody in the game can punish you for it. Punish meaning somebody gets a combo or a poke to attack for free. So -5, completely safe on block. That means I could block before the opponent attacks. So if I did this on block, the opponent could not combo me for it if I started blocking. Now, the opposite is true. If I do something that's plus on block, I can move before them, so I'm at advantage. So there's safe, unsafe, and at advantage. So we're at advantage here. We're safe here. Can you guess what we're at here? That's right, unsafe. Minus 13 is unsafe on block because any move that is 12 frames or faster will punish it. So if I go back to this example and I pick Johnny Cage, and we're going to have the opponent block, and I walk up and I do a back 3. I can punish with anything as Kung Lao, and the Johnny Cage can't block. Anything that's faster than 12 frames. As you can see, all jabs are 7 frames, so a jab is a pretty safe punish to do. Whereas if I try to do something a little bit slower, which like Kung Lao's forward 4 is 19 frames, so I'm going to try to punish with that. As you can see, Johnny can block in time. So you need to use a move that's quicker than their block advantage to punish. So for example, with Kung Lao, I would use maybe this starter, which is 8 frames, because I can get the most damage off it. And as you can see, it says punish down there. And I just took a third of his life bar for doing that on block. That is why knowing frame data is so crucial to understanding how to punish an opponent. And I'll show it once again with Johnny doing something that's maybe minus 5 on block. So as you can see, minus 5, you can't punish. There's no move faster than 6 frames in this game, and once again, only 3 characters have a 6-frame attack. But minus 7 and better is generally safe in this game. Like I said, you can't punish minus 5. So hopefully that kind of gives you a better understanding of frame data. But I'm going to show you guys a frame trap. This is very similar to what I showed on hit. And I think this is super important to understand because right here is why people complain about Johnny Cage. This is why Johnny Cage is so broken, because they don't understand frame data. Johnny Cage's jab string is very good because it is plus 3 on block. You guys see that down there? The block advantage? That's what we're going to be highlighting here. The block advantage in the bottom left corner says plus 3, which if you guys call back, what does that mean? That means that Johnny can move 3 frames before the opponent can. Now the biggest problem here is that Johnny Cage has a 9-frame mid attack. You can't duck mids. You can duck jabs, you can't duck mids. So, 9 frame startup. So take those two numbers, plus 3 on block with 9 frame startup. In a theoretical sense, this move comes out in 6 frames because I am at advantage. 6-frame attacks, which there are only 3 of them in this game, and Johnny has one of them. 6-frame attacks would, at best, if timed perfectly, would trade with Johnny's knee. And if you look at the whole cast, everybody else in the game besides Johnny Cage and Quan Chi have a 7-frame down 1. A down 1 is your poke, and this is the main way to get out of pressure. So if we set Kung Lao to do a reversal, so you set him to do get up reversal, and we do down 1, 7 frames, just like everybody else besides Johnny and Quan, and we set this reversal mode to on, I'm going to show you guys, if I tried to do something that's minus 5 on block and tried to press again, the down 1's going to interrupt, right? He countered me. But now, like I said, this is the timing of the practice mode dummy. He's going to do his down 1 as fast as possible. If I am +3 and he tries to down 1, my forward 3 will beat him 100% of the time, and it's all because of how the frame data works. As you can see right there, I countered him. So people choosing to get out of Johnny pressure after these 2 jabs are getting full comboed. And this goes across the board for all characters on how to get out of frame traps. This is your classic example and probably the most powerful frame trap in the game, is because on block you could do your jab into your mid and they cannot press. If they press a button, they will get hit, and that is what we call a frame trap. That is quintessential to understanding fighting games at a high level. This is how you play Street Fighter, how you play MK. They're all over the place, and you got to figure them out for your characters. And that is why I think learning frame data is super important. Because once you know that, you know after Johnny's jabs, you got to respect this. And that's why Johnny's can get away with murder. However, then when you realize that after Johnny checks you with a forward 3, he's -5 and he loses his turn. So it's not that endless onslaught. However, this is where the Lao hat comes into play. Before, the Kung Lao hat on block was +2, right? That was really good. But now it is -3 on block, which still makes Johnny Cage safe after a string. However, he can't continue his endless pressure, right? I'm trying to press forward 3, I'm trying to press buttons here, and it's just not working. But this is where staggers become important, because if I do a string and then I block, or if I do the string and you try to press there and I Lao hat, take a look at the hit advantage. And this goes for every character, this isn't just for Johnny. This is why Lao hat is very, very good. Because after a Lao hat on hit, it's +19, which that means I can move 19 frames before my opponent. So knowing that, you can do any move that is 19 frames or faster to lock down the opponent. So if they pressed again, I would get a full combo. So, for example, with Johnny Cage, that Lao hat hits, I'm doing dash up forward 3. Because if you try to mash a button or jump, I get a full combo. Now, if I mistime it or I did something too slow, you can get out of it. But that's the whole point of a frame trap. Frame traps work on block and on hit. Johnny is just so powerful because he has them on block. For example, stand 1 is +4. So I can do my forward 3, and it's like it's coming out in 5 frames. Because you take +4 on block, and then 9 frames of startup, that's 5 frames of wiggle room, which there's no move that's 5 frames in this game. So your only option out of it is to block. You gotta hold it. And that's why the biggest thing I teach my students is to hit confirm your pokes. Because once again, poking is a frame trap on hit. People focus all about the stuff on block, but you got to look at what's guaranteed on hit. So if we have our movement mode set to jump, right? You're down 1 is +12. And other characters, I'll show the reverse roll just to show that this isn't just Johnny Cage or anything. So I'm going to go be Kung Lao. We're going to switch the roles a little bit. I'm going to be Kung Lao. And we're going to set Johnny to jump. So as you can see, Kung Lao's down 1 is +12 on hit. Which means I can move 12 frames faster than the opponent. Now the reason this is important is because you can now jail things. Like, even though Kung Lao's mid is 13 frames, which is slower than 12, it's technically coming out in 1 frame. Because you are +12 frames of advantage doing a 13 frame move immediately. There is 1 frame that's basically going on there. And like I said, there's nothing that is faster than 6 frames as an attack. So the mid is guaranteed. You can see even though he tries to jump, he's still grounded. So it guarantees it. Now, the important thing is a lot of stuff in this game, a lot of the pressure comes with highs and staggers. So you may be thinking, well, how am I going to do highs if people duck all day? Right? If I set him to duck, look, that whiffs. What am I supposed to do? After any successful poke, after a down 1, you'll notice they duck. However, if you properly time your frame trap, you know, that 12 frames a hit advantage, you can jail high attacks. If you properly time your high after a poke, as you can see here, I can actually do my 2-1 before they can recover and duck, which means that the opponent has to block. If they do not block here, you will full combo them. If Johnny Cage tries to mash a button, he's getting full comboed. He's eating 35% for trying to mash a button there. So that makes the opponent have to block. I'll set them to auto block, right? So they have to hold that. I don't know why he just did that on reversal. That was funny. But they have to hold your block pressure, whatever it may be, right? So that is the importance of understanding frame data. The block advantage works for how safe you are on block or if it's your turn. And once you understand that further, you can learn when to disrespect moves and press when it's not your turn with the better understanding and watching of high-level gameplay. And then on hit, your hit advantage and startup frames matter because you can realize how you can lock down your opponent and what your options are. Like I said, I bet a lot of you guys didn't know after a poke that you can jail your highs, which allows you to pressure. Because look, 2-1 is +3 with Kung Lao, which then you can go for a throw. Or you can go for, well, I guess his mid's a little slow, but you can go for a down 1 or a down 4, something like that. Down 4 for pushback, whatever it may be. Very powerful stuff here. And then to further, you know, make his stagger game scarier, you could do stuff into like Goro. So, I don't know. What do Kung Laos do? Something like this. I guess that doesn't jail, but regardless, you can do a lot of stuff with cameos in this game as well. Now, like another example of frame data, what makes this character unique, right? So Kung Lao's armor attack is actually safe on block. It's the only safe armored attack in the game. You see it's -7, which means you could throw it out, no risk. No character can punish that really. It's very, very powerful to have a safe armored attack. That means you can go for, you know, armoring through a gap in a string or armoring out of pressure, whatever it may be, for 0 risk and all the reward. Because he's also one of the few characters that can combo off of his armor on hit. Right? So whatever the combo is here, I think it's back to 4, yeah. I think I'm doing it a little bit too late, but yeah, regardless, being able to combo off of safe armor is huge. That's why Kung Lao, like, when talked about, he's not really mentioned in the higher end of the tier list, but to have a tool that powerful in a game that's centered around a bunch of endless pressure with cameos and characters like Johnny Cage and stuff like that, being able to just get out for no risk with safe armor that's -7 on block is super powerful. Not enough people talk about it, but that's just one of those things when you pick a character to look at, right? Like Johnny Cage has the fastest armor in the game, but it's unsafe. Kung Lao has safe armor that launches. It's pretty good. So, you know, you can factor that into your characters and understand now why having safe armor is good or what even having safe armor is. So hopefully this frame data guide showed you guys enough examples. I feel like we covered a lot of important things. We covered frame traps on block, right? Johnny Cage's 1-1 string, his jab string into his mid. That's a frame trap. You cannot, if you press a button, you will get comboed. However, you can get out with armor. That's a different story. But if you press any normal button, you will get hit. I showed that you can jail pokes and moves on hit with your hit advantage, paying attention to that. I showed you examples earlier on of basically how slower moves won't jail unless the right frame data is calculated within the hit advantage in startup or block advantage in startup. Like I said, the active frames, the recovery frames, and the cancel advantage frames are not super important. What I want you to get out of this lesson is just how to read startup, how to read block advantage, and how to read your hit advantage. I want you to be able to tell if moves are safe or unsafe. I want you to be able to tell if you're plus or if the opponent's plus. And I want you to just make smarter decisions based off of that. Now, frame data, while it is a certain defined number, it doesn't guarantee anything. The opponent still has to time their attacks perfect, and I think it's good to test people on whether or not they're actually frame trapping, because, sometimes they might not be able to hit after a poke right away, and I think it's important to challenge things like that. Frame data is a very great baseline to understand how to play the fighting game, but it is not law, because there are ways around certain things and a bunch of different rules that you guys get to figure out while playing. For example, I will show really quickly. This is why Kung Lao Hat is still pretty good. Because what did we just go over? We went over, I'm gonna set Kung Lao to do a high. His high string. And we're gonna set that to reversal. So what I showed before is that if you are -5 or whatever, it's not your turn. You see Kung Lao took his turn back. If I tried to press a button like a jab or something, I'm gonna get beat. So that being said, Kung Lao Hat being -3, that technically it shouldn't be Johnny's turn anymore, or whoever's using this cameo, right? Technically, -3 is the end of your turn. However, it depends what the opponent does. Like I said, most characters in this game, to start their pressure, to start their stagger game, is going to be with high attacks, which you can duck under, as you can see. So, I have Kung Lao set to do his 1-2-1 string, his high string. And if I'm Johnny Cage, before that second hit of the string comes out, that's a mid, which if we look at the frame data, that second hit comes out in 15 frames. So we basically have 10 frames to do something after -5 if we duck. Because that mid won't hit us for a little bit. So if you know they're doing a high string, after -3, you can duck. And if you could duck, you could poke. So even though my turn should have ended right here, after a Lao Hat, I can poke if they're doing a high. So that's something important to note, as well as your opponent's moves. And this is why playing different matchups and playing a lot is very important to getting better. Because if I set Kung Lao's reversal to be 13 frames as mid, because let's say I'm poking him all day. If I'm poking him all day after low Lao Hat, he's getting mad and he wants to, frame trap me or do like a mid. He can't. His mid is too slow. -3, right? I'm -3 after Lao Hat, and Kung Lao's mid is 13 frames. So his mid comes out in 10 frames. However, every character has moves that are faster than 10 frames. Your jab is faster, so... Oh, he's gonna press a mid, boom, interrupted. Oh, he's gonna press a mid, my poke is 6 frames. So it wouldn't come out fast enough. That is why frame data, while very important to learn, it is not the law in every situation. Same thing with pokes. Johnny's poke is -6, but with pushback. So some things you might not be able to get your turn back because because of pushback. So there are factors like that. However, I think really focusing on understanding startup frames, block advantage, and hit advantage for your character will help you skyrocket through the ranks of the game and get better. I hope you guys found this helpful. I tried to use a lot of examples as Johnny, but also just things in general that apply to other characters, as well as using Kung Lao. But apply this knowledge to the cast, to the matchups you're learning, to the characters you're playing, and just watch how much better you improve after a little bit of sitting down to understand this. Thank you all for watching. Please leave a like and comment with any questions you have. Subscribe for more MK1 content.